So, have you ever been there? Just endlessly swiping, wondering why finding someone online feels more like a full-time job than an adventure? Well, you're so not alone. Let's dive into this modern maze together and see if we can find a better map using a little bit of data and a whole lot of strategy.
It is a huge paradox, isn't it? I mean, millions upon millions of people are using these apps, but so often the experience is just frustrating. Bad dates, burnout, you name it. So what's really going on behind the screen? Well, to get to the bottom of it, sometimes you got to start with the absolute worst-case scenario.
You honestly can't make this stuff up. That is a real story from data analyst Amy Webb. And wow, does it perfectly capture the high hopes and, the crushing lows of online dating. Now, it's an extreme example, for sure, but it points to a much bigger, fundamental problem that leads to this kind of disappointment.
And that problem, well, we can call it the authenticity paradox. See, online dating basically encourages us to become marketers. We're not just introducing ourselves, we're trying to sell this idealized version of ourselves. And that's where this dangerous gap starts to form, a gap that can lead to some serious letdowns.
This authenticity gap is really where all the trouble starts. When we polish away all our little quirks and only show our most marketable traits, we're setting up these expectations that reality can just never meet. It's the huge difference between the person in the profile and the person who actually shows up for coffee.
And you can see that disconnect so clearly right here. On the left, that's the real you. Complex, a little weird, with actual interests. But on the right, that's the online you, often generic, simplified, and kind of designed to appeal to everybody. The person who shows up on the date then has to live up to the person in the profile, and that is a really tough act to follow.
Behavioral scientist Dan Ariely just hits the nail on the head here. The apps themselves are part of the problem. They make us break ourselves down into these simple little data points, but those points don't actually tell anyone what it's like to be with us. He has this absolutely brilliant analogy for this.
Just think about it for a second. You're looking at a menu, and instead of, grandma's famous lasagna, it just lists flour, tomatoes, 25 grams of protein, and vitamin C content. Would you even know what you're ordering?
And that's exactly what we're doing. We are turning people into nutrition labels, and when we don't have enough meaningful information, what do? We get risk-averse. We play it safe, we swipe left more often, and we miss out on potentially amazing connections because, well, the dish just doesn't sound that appealing on paper. So, if the whole system is kind of flawed, how do you beat it? Well, you don't just quit, you get smarter. You start thinking like a data scientist. And that is exactly what Amy Webb, the woman from that disaster date, did. She took all that frustration and turned it into a formula. Her method is just pure logical genius. First, you make an intensely specific wish list. I mean, don't just say you want someone funny. Define what kind of humor. Then, and this is the key part, you create your own personal algorithm. You assign points to your must-have traits and set a minimum score for even getting a date. This isn't about being overly picky, it's about being strategic. It's about being crystal clear on what you want so you don't waste your time, or anyone else's. Okay, so once you know exactly what you're looking for, the next big step is to build a profile that actually attracts that specific kind of person. This isn't about marketing a fake version of you. It's about showcasing the real you in the most effective way possible. The data from Webb's experiment is kind of surprising. It turns out long, detailed bios don't really work. The sweet spot is right around 97 words. So why? It's the same idea that makes sites like BuzzFeed so addictive. You create a curiosity gap. You give them just enough to be intrigued to make them want to know the rest of the story. And while you're writing, please, I'm begging you, avoid the cliches. These phrases are basically just placeholders that say nothing unique about you. They make you sound like every other profile out there. Oh, and be really careful with sarcasm. In writing, it loses its charm and can just come across as negative or even angry. Here is a super simple but powerful tip that's backed by data. Just be positive. Webb found that profiles using optimistic words like fun and happy did way better. So don't list what you don't want in a partner. Instead, paint a picture of what you love, what gets you excited. Then ask yourself honestly, would you want to date the person in this profile? All right, let's talk pictures. We've got our words down, now for the visuals. And the data here is incredibly clear. Research from eHarmony shows that you need a bare minimum of 4 photos. Any less than 4, and it can kind of look like you're hiding something. But, and this is just as important, there's an upper limit. The advice is to stop at 7.
If you go beyond that, the perception can shift from open and authentic to, a bit self-absorbed. So that sweet spot, the magic range, is somewhere between 4 and 7. Simple, right?
And hey, don't just post 7 selfies from the same angle. Think of it like a little photo portfolio that tells a story. You need a clear headshot, a shot that shows off your personal style, one of you actually doing something you love, one that proves you have a social life, and yes, a full body shot. Together, these things create a much more complete and frankly more authentic picture of your life.
So as we start to wrap this all up, it's so important to reframe the entire goal here. The point of a better strategy and a better profile isn't just about getting more swipes or racking up more matches. It's about getting the right ones. And this right here is probably the most important takeaway of all. This isn't a choice between being strategic and being authentic. The whole entire point of using a data-driven strategy is to communicate your true self more clearly and more effectively, so you can cut through all the noise of a pretty flawed system.
And this quote just explains why this matters so much. When your profile is generic or vague, you're pretty much forcing people to judge you based on the superficial stuff they can see. A strategic, authentic, and detailed profile doesn't let that happen. It gives them a real reason to look past the surface and see the actual person behind it.
So I'll just leave you with this question. It's a question that should really guide every single choice you make on these apps. Are you playing a numbers game, or are you playing for that one connection that truly matters? Because the strategy you choose, well, that's going to give you the answer.